Hi, I'm Tom Eschen, and welcome to the award-winning Power in Politics podcast, the conversation about the issues that are impacting you the most with the people that are making the decisions, the advocates that are calling for change, and holding them accountable along the way, too. Today, we sit down with United Way of the Greater Capital Region President and CEO Peter Gannon, a long-ranging, wide-ranging conversation at that. We first talk about some of the proposals the state has made when it comes to the $200 million investment into the downtown Albany and the United Way's role in all of that, what he thinks about some of those proposals. Along with the state budget, we talk about that too, universal childcare, tax credits we get into as well. We also talk about their free tax prep program, which they offer out to the community. And then finally, we wrap things up getting his perspective on the current conversation going on right now around nonprofit organizations as a whole in this country. You can always listen to the full podcast on our Power in Politics podcast page. Just search Power in Politics CBS 6 or on YouTube at CBS 6 Albany. We're joined today by Peter Gannon. He is the president and CEO of the United Way of the Greater Capital Region. Peter, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we got a lot to get to, but first, let's get to some of the news of the week. And obviously, this has been something percolating in the state for the last year, the $200 million for Albany. We just saw something more substantial when it comes to proposals coming out on Friday from the state in that report. As someone that's invested in this community and in it for the long haul, and you're located right there in downtown, Pearl Street, just off Pearl, what did you make of what the state is now looking to do after getting the community feedback and now here moving forward?
Yeah, I think it's long overdue. The city of Albany needs a bold, radical transition to breathe some life back into the city. I'm a big proponent of downtown, of all downtowns, not just Albany, but really have loved being a part of that community for the past 5 years. We made that bet in the middle of the COVID pandemic that that downtown was going to be key to coming back out of the pandemic. And for our organization, it's been great to be down there, but it has its challenges, right? It has its challenges. It's tough to find a place to have lunch right now. It's tough to find a place to grab a drink after work, and you'd love to see some more vibrancy there. But you're seeing incremental steps and this infusion, some new leadership in the mayor's office. County executive has been aggressive, and now the state coming in with real financial support, I think, can be a catalyst to bringing about some of the needed change to bring downtown back to what it should be here in the capital city and kind of the hub of the capital region.
Are you involved in that? Have you been involved, and will you be moving forward? I know they have some different, groups, committees now moving forward here.
Yeah, I participated in a lot of the public input sessions, and certainly have weighed in on the things about the process that I thought needed improvement. And
like what?
I'm of the belief that the developers should be kept on the sideline until we have a real plan, and then let the developers come in and do what developers do. And so what you see, I think, are pieces of a plan coming together. I'd like to see more details, and for it to be bold and transformative. I think it's going to require a little more concentration than what we've seen so far, but from what I saw on Friday, I think it steps in the right direction. And like I said, I think the development community is an important part of the solution for downtown. I just think there's a time and a place, and state and city officials have done an awesome job of getting authentic, genuine community input about what we want our downtown to be. And downtown in Albany is different than downtown in other cities, right? It really becomes a connection for all these amazing neighborhoods. And so in order to bring that to fruition, you need real resources, and $200 million is a good start.
There's a lot of stakeholders here. You just mentioned a couple of them when it comes to officials, developers, everyone in between. What do you think once some of this is actually boots on the ground, shovels in the ground, what is your organization's role in making sure to maximize this?
Yeah, I think, being an active part of the constituency in downtown has been one of the best things about running United Way for the past 5 years. And so to build on that and to have a real sense of community, I kind of, mentioned before, my perspective on downtown Albany is that it is this, it just sits at the crossroads of all these amazing neighborhoods. And so to, have activities where people are coming together, that's what United Way is all about, is community and bringing people together. We need that now more than ever. The social fabric of society is kind of in tatters, and the way I think you get back to that is by bringing people together. And if downtown Albany can become a place where you can bring your family, you can bring your friends and socialize and be in community together. I think that's the key to the future of the city and really our region.
Yeah, we showed some of the renderings the other day, probably was a part of this conversation as well. But I think that you do a lot of work when it comes to the ALICE data, and I think that's another layer of all this, right? You can see all these proposals, you can hear about adding jobs, you can hear about adding housing, but there's also another layer of structural societal issues at play here, right? If you can speak to this ALICE data and how that, for you, and why that's become so important in terms of trying to address some of the needs here at the community.
Yeah, so Alice was developed because the federal poverty line doesn't accurately depict how badly families are struggling, and so the federal poverty level hasn't been updated since Lyndon Johnson created it in the '60s. And so, Alice studies incomes in a certain community against what it costs to survive and thrive, and we know that when we look at that data, it's 2 out of 5 households here in the capital region that are living below that threshold. That includes communities like Niskayuna next door to here. It includes communities like Loudonville, where I live, where Alice can be in the single digits or in the teens. So the converse of that is that there are communities and pockets of this community where it's almost 100% Alice or 100% Alice and folks living in extreme poverty. So, we try to bring that study to light every year so that policymakers and the community at large can have a better understanding of how badly families are struggling. It's kind of become, fashionable over the past 18 months to talk a lot about affordability. It's something we've been talking about, for eternity. And families are having to make tough decisions every single day about, how far they can stretch their dollar and whether or not they can put money into savings, whether or not they can make that home repair or that car repair so that they can have reliable transportation to work or a safe place to live. And so these are real decisions that happen at tables like this every single night in our community. I'm encouraged to hear the governor talking a lot about affordability. You're hearing it a lot at the national level, really at all level of politics and government, and anxious to support policy decisions that are going to help ease some of the pressures that these Alice families are facing. And that's what we do every day at United Way. I mean, we don't have a silver bullet to fix all these issues, and we certainly don't have the resources to do it. But a lot of the things that we do each day are meant to alleviate some of the pressure that families are facing. If we can just ease one valve, then maybe that takes some of the pressure off other places in the system.
What have you found that works in addressing some of those issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think, everybody hears about food. We have tremendous partners like, my friend Tom Nardacci at the food bank and the food pantries. And really, that's a system that saw tremendous pressure during the COVID pandemic, and it hasn't eased since. And so, I think about the work that we do. We provide free meals, 200,000 free meals in the summer months to children in the capital region that depend on a public school system for access to quality, nutritious food during the school year. Where do those kids, where do those families turn in July and August when, school's not in session? And so, at sites all across the region, we're providing nutritious meals with our partners. 85% of those sites have additional enrichment activities to keep those kids coming back, right? And that's important. Kids need fuel to learn. They need fuel in those summer months to sustain the growth they made as students. And so that they are ready to come back to learn in September when school is back in session. And again, it's not a silver bullet that can fix a household's budget, but it's one thing that saves families, a couple $100 in the summer. We were really proud to support access to school meals for every kid in New York State, which became a law and took effect this past September. In fact, I got to go to my alma mater in Latham at Blue Creek and serve lunch on the first day of school to those kids. It's crazy to me to think with the resources that we have that we weren't taking care of home base and helping to alleviate some of that pressure for families. Governor has a proposal in the budget this year to extend the free school meals program into the summer months, which will help us advance that work and make sure kids have what they need to be successful.
Before we get too far, I did want to ask, because you went down to Florida, I believe, or you went to a conference recently about this data, about some of these issues with affordability. How do the capital region's statistics data compare to the rest of the country?
Well, I mean, it's a bit of a hollow victory to say we're doing a little bit better than national trends, but we are trending a couple percentage points better than what we're seeing nationally. Is still far too many. And if anybody watching this program takes anything away from it, whenever I go into public spaces and talk about Alice, what I try to hammer home is the fact that it's much more prevalent than anyone thinks. If it's not you, thank God. But if it's the parents of the kids your kids go to school with, it's people that work in this organization, it's people that work at the organizations your viewers work at. It's everywhere, and it's in every community, right? We talked about the lower rates in places like Loudonville and Niskayuna, but it's important to note Alice is still there, and it's everywhere. And, I mentioned at the top that, we created Alice as a way to more accurately depict how badly families are struggling because the federal poverty level didn't do that. I'm starting to think that with all the challenges we're seeing around affordability, I don't think Alice is accurately depicting how badly families are struggling anymore, because we're seeing and hearing anecdotally of families with six-figure incomes, right? $150,000 a year, two adults working in the household that are still struggling to make ends meet every week.
Yeah, because I think it was the Times Union who put out some numbers recently that said to be able to save, obviously you have when you go to high school, right, they say here's how much you need to budget in some classes to be able to save. I think it was you have to be making at least, $90,000, $100,000 on your own, right? And I think that shows you that that bar is pretty high for some, right, when it comes to this.
It's high, and I applaud the governor. She's done, I think, in this budget proposal and in last year's budget, I think, done some real meaningful things to try to attack this issue of affordability for families. But again, it's one tactic when there is just a force of pressures coming down on households. Putting us on a path towards universal childcare. I have a 3-year-old, so I know the costs of childcare are. It's very expensive, and how families are putting it together and trying to make it happen, it then makes families make really tough decisions, like, do we enter the workforce? Does one of us stay home? And we know that we need workers. So, I think it doesn't become this, polarizing political issue, right? This is a workforce development issue, really, to make sure we have more people in the workforce. I know. And those costs continue to increase. And, it's just one area of pressure. But Alice measures this stuff to give us this picture. And, we share that with policymakers so that they can make informed decisions and proposals about what's going to make a meaningful difference for families.
And those who don't know, asset limited, income constrained, employed, right?
That's what I feel like everybody knows,
yeah.
Right?
Right.
No?
If they didn't, now you know.
Yeah, now you know.
Just making sure. The other, you mentioned the child care aspect of things, and there are some that say, well, maybe we should expand tax credits, the child tax credit. And I know also something that the organization is a proponent for, the working families tax credit. And I think that's another avenue here. Would you agree with that that could help?
100%. The tax credits, EITC, the child tax credits. We saw that, first off, with working family tax credit, or earned income tax credit, these are proven public policy measures that lift families above the poverty threshold. They also lift families above that Alice threshold. So more of that. I think we need to change the way we deploy it. I'm going off script now. This is like my personal opinion. People shouldn't have to wait for an income tax refund. Let's find ways to get those family money up front. Well, how do you know that works? Well, we did it during COVID, right? Remember when we got those infusions of cash up front? Those were tax credits, essentially. And so, that's a proven methodology that works when families have more cash in their checking account, in their bank accounts. They're making decisions that oftentimes are most advantageous for their families. They make those decisions very effectively and efficiently. And so, changing perception about what families are doing with cash and what they're doing with these benefits, is a big part of what we do. But expanding those tax credits, here in New York State, there's some additional working families tax credits, child tax credits, advancing the payments of those so that people don't have to wait for tax refund. I think are all really smart policy decisions to put more money in families' pockets right now to address the affordability crisis.
What do you say to those, and this is a bit off script too, but there are always the pushback, why should I have to pay my tax dollars for something else like this? You hear that with childcare, you hear that with universal school meals, because you hear the whole narrative, that's not free, right? Someone has to pay for that. What is your response when you hear some of the opposition to programs like that?
My initial response is not safe for broadcast, but what I would say when I'm more level-headed and thinking about it clearly is that, investing in our children and making sure, these are the people that are going to be filling the jobs in 20 years here. They're the people that are going to be taking care of us when we are all old and gray. That's a pretty good investment to make. I can't think of many places better to put resources then into our children. It's become such a focal point of what we do at United Way, between summer meals, free income tax prep to get these child tax credits back to families, or delivering over 200,000 books in the past year and a half, like we've done in our partnership with Dolly Parton. All of those things are about investing in our kids to make sure that they're getting off to the best start possible. There's not a better investment we could be making with our tax dollars.
You brought up the pandemic a few times.
Yeah.
I guess we're not.
It's trauma.
We're technically 6 years removed because I know that it's stretched, into 2021 as well. But it's still hanging over, right? And I think that is lost on some people when it comes to some of the strains economically, affordability. Why do you think it's still present, and maybe more of a subtle way than we saw? It was so obviously front-facing back then.
Yeah, I mean, I've dear friends in the restaurant industry. They're still feeling it, right? People haven't gone back to, you saw the, advance of concepts like delivery and, stuff during the pandemic. And a lot of that stuff is here to stay, right? It's going to affect retail. It's going to affect restaurants. I think that's troubling, right, for society. And, in an anecdotal way, people staying home isn't a good thing. It's not a good thing for us at United Way. People need to be in community. They need to be together. And a lot of that happens out and about, right? Which are things that were kind of taken from us in the pandemic. And so getting back to that is, it's been a long, slow trend. It was also a major, disruption to the global economy. You don't recuperate from that overnight. It takes time, right? And so, I think thinking back to 2020 is scary because nobody knew what was going to happen back then. And so all things considered, I think we've done okay in terms of coming back, but there are things that are forever changed, and most of them are not for the better, right? Most of them are a disruption of the way we did things before. And so, I think incrementally we continue to come back to the way we used to be. And we're trying to be a part of that and be a place that people can come together for good.
Yeah, I mean, you said forever changed. I was going to ask if there was a time where you thought maybe things are back or at least found an equilibrium, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like we're there yet.
I don't think it's ever coming back to the way it was exclusively, but I think it's on us to sort of bring it back to what we want it to be.
So we get now, I remember back in the fall when there was the government shutdown with the federal workers and the United Way's role in trying to help them.
I think we're in the middle of a shutdown right now. It feels a little different.
DHS is shut down right now as they figure out the whole immigration issue. Won't get into that here, but your role back then, what did you see when it came to helping individuals like that? It was a shutdown. People weren't working, or if they were working without pay. What did you do, and what kind of impact did you see it make?
One of the superpowers of our organization, if people don't know this about their local United Way, why we're essential to this community. We have 20 hardworking professionals on the ground right here in the Capital Region that can respond to immediate emergency needs. And so when the first shutdown happened in 2019, we learned of this, pain point at the airport specifically. The airport is this critical hub to economic development in our community. If the airport shuts down, it's a major problem. And we learned then that TSA workers were being told, report to work or risk losing your job. But they hadn't had a check in 6 weeks. Some from commuting as far away from Albany Airport as like Wappingers Falls, an hour and a half, hour and 20 minutes. Don't have money for gas in their tank, let alone groceries or rent or any of these other challenges. So at that time, we sprang into action a little bit late, but tried to do what we could to mitigate those issues. This year, when it came about, we were in a better position to support. We were able to partner with our partners at the food bank to get fresh groceries to those workers. We came through thanks to partnership with our partners at Stewart's, and we're able to do gas gift cards, as well as some grocery gift cards with our partners at Price Chopper, Hannaford, and mitigate some of the worst conditions that those folks were dealing with. And we came back and did it twice. But through that, worked with County Executive McCoy because what differentiated this shutdown from previous was that the government was withholding nutrition benefits to families. And if folks don't know this, and I think a lot of people do understand this, but your nutrition benefits are supposed to carry you for a month. That's how often they get paid out. But what we know from our data, from our research, is that usually by the 10th or 12th day of the month, folks have exhausted their benefits, and they have another 18 days to go. And that's when they turn to our food pantries and our food bank and the rest of the charitable food system. And so we knew that when, the situation of benefits being withheld at the first of the month might have not sounded like a crazy urgent issue, but we knew based on what families' real experiences were, it was a much bigger issue than people thought. And so, very quickly, in just a few hours, we turned around a plan to take some public funds from Albany County, convert those into grocery store gift cards, because you couldn't send people to the pantries that had no food. The food bank running low on food, and so what could we do? We had to get people resources so they could go to the grocery stores where there was actually food. And that's, I'm very proud of that, because, it wasn't a perfect system. It certainly was chaotic and didn't go as smoothly as any of us had wanted. But in a crisis, our organization, United Way, was there to help families in need mitigate the worst possible aspects of a crisis. And that's what we've done in this community for 100 years.
Did that period this time around reveal any gaps that you think there needs to be some sort of permanent support moving forward?
Yeah, I think, we've long been advocating for enhanced SNAP benefits at the federal level. There are some proposals right now to, make up any deltas at the state level. And those are all things that, without getting into specifics, I think, need to have their, sort of day in court and be heard. But I think, anytime you can enhance the nutrition benefits, what you have to keep in mind is the majority of people receiving those benefits are the youngest people in our community and the oldest, and our friends living with disabilities.
Yeah.
So, challenges this perception of people who, maybe resent the fact that folks are getting a free ride. It's just not the case. There are abuses in every system. I'm not going to deny that, but SNAP mainly serves our seniors, the folks in our community that live with disabilities, and then our children. So,
yeah, I asked about the permanent aspect because you look at right now what's going on with the government, and you saw when the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was signed and what that would do to SNAP in the future. Yeah. We saw the pandemic era thresholds, those expired last year, and now you see this other issue coming down the pike when you're going to see people that aren't able to access these benefits.
Sure.
And that's why I'm curious about if there is a permanent funding solution or what. And obviously you have, like we said, we've asked state stakeholders, county, and there's a lot of different stakeholders here, but obviously you've played a role in this before.
Yeah, so what I'd say up front is not to scapegoat, but don't look at us. There just isn't enough resources in the charitable food system to solve this crisis. It's got to be a public policy decision. And so, if the will of the federal government is to reduce SNAP benefits, which it is, it's going to adversely impact people who have depended on those benefits in the future, then state, county government's going to be on them to step in and try to fill the gaps, or else you're going to see the ramifications of that. What those are exactly, I don't know, but I know just based on what we did in a limited amount in November of folks who've needed those benefits, relied on them for access to nutritious food, it's got the potential to be major challenge, and not sure how you make it what it was. And I'm also not saying that there wasn't a need to make some adjustments, but what I do know is that timing right now is tough, because any changes to those systems is going to exacerbate severe pressure that are already on these families. And that's what we're watching and monitoring closely to see what we can do to support.
While we're talking about sort of food insecurity and that aspect, the Hunger-Free Campus Act is something else that your organization has looked at as something being to support right now. And you hear about college campuses putting food pantries on campus and college kids being food insecure. What is your perspective on that?
I think, listen, the college experience, you think about the resources that go into that. It's crazy that there are kids who are attending college that are going hungry. Yeah. I could sit here and we could point finger all around the table at who's to blame about that. So with the Hunger-Free Campus initiative, obviously we're supportive of it. If we can make sure these kids stay in school, get their education, and eliminate one of those barriers that's keeping them from do that, we're going to be for that. We've been involved with some preliminary conversations about how we enhance food security on campuses by adding some pantries and doing that. RPI's got a great program. Schenectady Community College has some great programs using some new technology like the parcel lockers that you see at Best Buy or retail stores to pick up packages so that students can access this food with dignity. And that's what it's about, right? College is a tough period in people's lives. Affordability of college is a major challenge a lot of people are facing. And, the mental health of our young people who are attending college is got to be a paramount priority. And so whatever we do, to do it in a way with dignity so that kids can stay in school, have what they need to be successful, I think that's, something worth looking at.
Obviously, we're here in the month of February, but tax season is here. Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program, something else you facilitate. If you want to tell us about that.
Yeah, so VITA is a long-standing partnership. A lot of United Ways across the country participate in this partnership with the IRS. There's a number of reasons we do it. One, it's expensive for some families to, about $250 to $300 to have your taxes prepared. So when we say free, we mean free. There's also a lot of, predatory efforts out there to try to, promise you things like your refund immediately. What they leave out is that they're taking huge percentages of that refund. So we want to prepare your taxes for you free with IRS certified volunteers in a way that puts all of your money back in your pocket so you can use that for your family. Last year we did 6,600 returns here in the Capital Region, saved $1.5 million in filing fees, brought another $9 million back to the Capital Region economy. Our volunteers are trained to look for all those tax credits that we talked about before, even look back to some of the pandemic era assistance that was provided and make sure that people who are struggling are getting the tax credits that they're entitled to. This year, we already have 3,000 appointments on the book. That number is probably higher by the time this airs. Wow. Folks, low and moderate income households, if you're making below $67,000, my kids are home going 67 right now that I said that, $67,000, you can get your taxes done absolutely free. If you're a little higher than that, if you're around the threshold, I encourage you to make an appointment and come in and talk with one of our experts. Chances are we're still going to be able to help you out.
Yeah, at the Blake Annex there?
Well, you can go to unitedwaygcr.org or getfreetaxprep.org, and there's 24 sites across the Capital Region where we have volunteers, and you can book an appointment at a place that's, you don't have to come to downtown Albany. You can book an appointment most likely in your neighborhood or your community, because we offer that program in all 9 counties that we serve.
Great. And I want to finish with this, and I think this is more of a broader macro question, but since over the course of the last couple months, we've heard a lot about nonprofits in the national media. And some of that stems from claims in Minnesota to other places now saying, should we investigate what's going on here?
Sure.
As someone in that space, what is your message to people who might question finances, what the impact is? Because I think that that's another narrative that you hear right now about nonprofits. So I wanted to give you an opportunity to address that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, we always welcome scrutiny of what we do. I don't think, I work in this sector every single day, and here in the Capital Region, it's the hardest working, some of the most talented people. They make less than they could get in the private sector for sure, but they care about this community. And I think the nonprofit sector gets scrutinized. You have to welcome that scrutiny. But really proud of the fact that we are great stewards of our donors' dollars and public dollars when that's the case. We talked about VITA. VITA is a $120,000 grant. We just talked about $10.5 million annually of impact that we bring back to the region. So, pound for pound, for every dollar you're putting in, for every $100,000 you're putting in, we're bringing $10 million back to the community. Nonprofits are always on the cusp of finding ways to do more with less, and you get told that all the time. So, I think it's easy to kind of demonize, our sector at this time, but those of us who are welcoming the transparency and the scrutiny, I think that's essential, and we're ready for it, and have a record that you can defend. Then you've got nothing to worry about. It's frustrating when we see abuses in other communities because that puts us all on defense, but that's going to happen. It happens in the corporate world. It happens in every sector. We get a couple more headlines about it when it happens in our sector, but for the most part, I think people, especially here in the Capital Region, can rest assured, You've got amazing professionals doing amazing work every single day to improve conditions for everybody in this community.
Peter, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Appreciate you having me.
Thanks for listening. We appreciate it. You can always find us on our Power and Politics podcast page. Just search Power and Politics CBS 6 wherever you get your podcasts. It is free. Subscribe and like and give us a rating today so that way we can continue to grow and talk to more of the people that you want to hear from here on Power and Politics.